It's been a while now since I finished my 617 film back, and I've been feeling that urge to build something. I need a new project. And then, out of nowhere, the Instagram gods supplied. I kept on getting clip after clip after clip of Instax Backs for medium format cameras like Bronica ETRSs and RB67s and so on. And I noticed that there were not many designed for the Hasselblad system. So I did a little bit of research, and there are a couple of companies out there that sell film backs that use the Instax square format film for the Hasselblad film system. But buying it, that's just easy. There's no fun in that. So I decided to build my own. And so I did a bit of research. Now, most of the film backs that work with the Hasselblad system either have the film coming out sideways or mounted sideways, and some of them even upside down, so the film actually comes out that way. Which means that, yes, it works, but you either have your image that way, which just doesn't work for me, or some of them are actually upside down, where you've got the bottom lip of the Instax as the top of your image, which didn't do it for me. And so I wanted to build the classic, that way, film back. And so with a plan in hand, I got on eBay. To mount the back on the Hasselblad, rather than to reinvent the wheel, I found a model for a adapter plate for mounting an Imicon digital back onto a Hasselblad. So I downloaded that and printed it off just to sort of see how it worked. Then it was a matter of finding out, how much room I've got to play with. So I measured the existing Hasselblad back to see how far back the film plane is, which is from memory about 4mm, and then also I did the same thing with the Instax film cartridge to see how far from where it is mounted into the Instax back, how far back is the actual film itself. Once I had those numbers, I then got a Instax off eBay and proceeded to pull it apart. Now let's discuss the wonderful subject of capacitors. Now, for cameras like this that have a flash, they make use of a capacitor to fire the flash. Here you'll see I'm carefully desoldering all the wires for all the different parts and pieces. And for those of you in the know, you'll see I've made the massive rookie mistake of leaving those bare wires free, and then at some stage the positive and negative touch, and you'll see my response. Luckily, it didn't actually do any damage, just perhaps needed to change my pants. And then I proceeded to remove the rest of the wiring. At this stage I didn't know what I needed and didn't need, so I sort of desoldered everything and kept everything, because at this stage I was still trying to figure out what I was going to have to do to have the camera basically eject film. That's all you need from this back, is to press a button and for it to eject film. Everything else is done by the Hasselblad. Fire off a frame, and next thing you know, yeah, we've got our little eject mechanism for our Instax working. So that's the first step that I needed to get working, and then I just thought I'd do a test with the actual film. I'm able to get film to eject. I've got a sacrificial cartridge there. So now that I've got a general idea of how much space I've got to work with, I start to work with the Dremel to start cutting away and making room for a thinned down version of this Imicon plate. I've basically got it as thin as I can, which is about 4mm. I can't really go any thinner than that because the top catches on the Hasselblad black. And really at this stage, I don't really have a specific plan of what I need to remove and what I don't need to remove. I'm kind of winging it, which, as you'll see, some foreshadowing there of how that's not always a good idea. But I know roughly I just need to get a flat plane so that I can then glue the Imicon sort of adapter plate in. And so yeah, you'll see here I'm doing a little test eject just to make sure the system's still working, and it's not. And after a little bit of looking, I realise what I've done. In my haste to clear out as much plastic as possible to make room for the adapter, I managed to Dremel straight into the gearing mechanism that actually ejects the film. So completely and utterly ruined that. So I purchased another Instax and got to pulling it apart. This time I was even quicker at pulling it apart than I was the last time. And you'll see here the very first thing I did was to isolate the capacitor, and I removed all of the electronics from the system. So you'll see here also, because I already had my first go at the wiring, which was a bit of a mess because I was figuring it out, the second time around I was able to trim the wiring down to the minimum needed, so that I have a very neat little cable run of cables that are no longer than they need to be, and so they're much easier to manage with a little bit of Kapton tape. And just a little test just to make sure with my new shutter button that the system's still working, and then into Dremeling. And this time, of course, I was very careful to avoid making the same mistake as I did last time, but I was able to use that mistake and that first version to isolate where I needed to Dremel. And to be honest, a lot of what I'd cut out before I didn't actually need to cut out. There was only a very small amount that really, and it was all more a case of just flattening it, and to, as you can see here, for the Imicon sort of adapter plate to fit. And this is my first fit up of the camera with the back. Looks a little messy, but you know, it all fits quite nicely, which is good to see. Then I did a quick and dirty paint job. I did absolutely zero prep, so I'm pretty sure this paint will only last a very short period of time, but I just sort of wanted it to sort of be a little less orange. Plus you'll also see here, this is the change I made to the locking catch. I don't have room in the camera to have it at the top like the original Imicon design, so now it's on the inside, and then I've glued in a momentary switch to what was the eyepiece, and glued that in there so that will be the eject button for the film once you shoot the frame on the Hasselblad. But as you can see here, I just attach the camera back and do a test just to make sure that it's still working after my aborted mistake before. And you'll see here that we need to make some clearance for the top plate so that the viewfinder, or the waist level viewfinder, can eject. So I just trimmed that out with the Dremel. And now there is effectively the finished back, ready for testing purposes. I mean, the paint job is not too bad. I mean, it's better than bright orange. Now you see here I've printed a 3mm spacer that I'm going to put into the camera, and that will raise up the ground glass by 3mm, which according to my maths should probably be okay. And I'm going to do a test frame, so load on the film back and lock it in. And here I've set up a little test scene with a focusing chart. Now you see at the moment I don't have a way of attaching the waist level viewfinder, so I sort of hold it on top and fire off a frame and eject. Now the first frame, as you can see, is soft, so the 3mm spacer is not enough. So I added in another 3mm spacer and fired off another frame, and it is perfectly in focus, exactly where I want it to be. And this is shot at f2.8, mind you. So I popped on my 150mm f4 and did another test shot. Once again, popping my waist level viewfinder onto the top, just to make sure that even with different lenses, everything is correct. And once again, nice and perfectly sharp with a 6mm, basically 6mm spacer. So there, we've got our 3mm was just soft, and keep in mind this is all at the widest aperture, so f2.8 and f4 for the longer lens. So if you were to stop down the aperture, it would be less of a problem. And then I also found a model of, it was an adapter for using a Hasselblad waist level viewfinder on a Yashica from memory. So I got that, and so I modified it so it sit on top of the spacer, allowing the viewfinder to attach. And now it was time to go and test the camera out in the field. On a very rainy day down in Melbourne, decided to go for a bit of a wander. So fired off my very first frame outside in the field, and I metered on the building. The sky was quite bright, so I was not expecting everything to be exposed nicely. The dynamic range of Instax is that of a potato, so as you can see the sky is completely blown out, but I'm quite happy with my first frame. So I decided to go inside and shoot at a location called the Jam Factory. The metering on these shots is exceptionally difficult. Any highlights are just getting blown out, but it's definitely a bit of fun. But definitely using the spot meter, you expose for what you want exposed, and then everything lighter or darker is just gone. but the actual camera itself is working really well. It's really nice being able to actually sort of look through the viewfinder and really choose focus rather than an Instax camera normally where everything is in focus and it's kind of hit and miss whether you even get a shot. I was really happy with this one. Even the distance was not too, even though I was a little bit overexposed in the distance, it's not too bad. This shot didn't really work out so well. Giant skylight in the ceiling. I'd actually metered on the movie posters, and so they were exposed, but pretty much everything else was blown out. Once again, similar location, the giant skylight just really messes with metering. Wasn't expecting to get much out of this shot because it is quite dark, and from memory it was a couple of second exposure, and I think it kind of feels like I maybe have some light leak there. I'm not sure. I didn't get into any of the other shots, so hard to say. And then my last frame of the 10 frames of an Instax cartridge, and for my last frame I have to say, of all the 10 frames that I shot, this is definitely my favourite. So there you have it. If I'm honest, I've never really been a fan of Polaroid or Instax images, and so the process of building the back was the point of all of this. I was never really looking to get a really excellent, wonderful Instax photo because at the end of the day, its dynamic range is pitiful, maybe 5 or 6 stops at best. So when you're metering for a scene, pretty much anything that's above or below that is going to be either blown out or just the black's going to be crushed beyond belief. But it was an interesting challenge. I'm really happy with the result. It does everything that I'd originally planned for it to do when I thought about it. It doesn't impact any way on the actual Hasselblad. I didn't have to alter the Hasselblad in any way. And it takes literally 5 seconds to take the back off and put a regular film back on it. I don't think I'll be shooting a lot of Instax, although I did find that there's actually a black and white Instax that you can get, so I've ordered some of that. I'm going to give that a go, and maybe that might give me some images that I really like. Of the 10 images that I shot, the last image was without a doubt my favourite, and I would definitely put that in my folio, if I had a folio. So that about wraps it up. Unfortunately, weather in Melbourne at the moment is terrible, so I haven't been able to take the 617 camera out recently, but I'm really hoping that once the weather gets a little bit better, I get to go out and do some photography trips. But in the meantime, say hi to your dog for me.